Okay, so we're going to. So we talked about up to this point a lot of mindset. We're going to start getting into numbers. So there's two sets of numbers that an MREA is always aware of. That's their goal numbers, or their annual numbers, and their actual numbers, monitored on a weekly basis. So this is what we're coming back to the reference. Let's see here. Do you know your numbers? Who knows their numbers? Stephanie's on. I know Stephanie knows her numbers. Amy's on. I know Amy knows her numbers. Louisa's on. I know she tracks hers. Okay, so go ahead.
I said I know mine.
Well, and definitely Petra, you know, as a market center, we do the same thing. We set annual goals, monthly goals, and weekly goals, and we track them and report them.
And we're crushing it.
Yes.
I just had that.
Yes. Thanks. Thank you, Wendy. We are crushing them. Certainly, we're ahead on some, maybe a little bit behind on others, but we know where we're at, and we're making adjustments to get to where we want to go. So starting with numbers, we've got the 8 goal categories of the Millionaire Real Estate Agent. Number one, everything again, foundational, starts with leads generated. Let me see, we're on page 107, if you're following along. Oops, sorry.
It's actually on 109, I believe, that screen.
Yes, 109, yeah, starts on page 109, figure 13. All right, so everything starts with leads and leads generated. Without leads, you don't have anything else. Second one is listings. Again, foundational. We got to get those listings. In terms of leads and listings, not only do you need those numbers, but you're also going to start looking at the conversions of those numbers. Conversions rate for converting calls to buyer appointments, conversion rates for converting calls to listing appointments or seller appointments. Second goal, or third goal, I'm sorry, contracts written. So contracts written, you're really tracking number of units, total volume, and the gross income. The fourth category, contracts closed. Looking at, again, number of units closed, total volume, and gross. Now, the fifth goal category, money. So again, this is part of the MREA's thought process is really about more so not as much sales per se, but more being a business person. So we, in terms of running a business, we have to think about money. We have to approach it as a business as such. The issues of money always have to be accounted for and respected. The big money numbers to track is gross closed income, which is how much do we take in, budget, how much do we spend, net income, how much do we earn, and then agent compensation, what do we actually take home. People, number 6, this is where leverage really starts. The first and most important piece of leverage that you're going to have in your business. There's really 3 subsets to people. Recruiting, you know, who are the people I have, or where do I get the people from? Training, what training needs do they have? And consulting, what performance or accountability issues are involved there. And so from a leadership point of view, if you never managed people before, it's probably going to be a good time to get some leadership training. And there's a lot of different resources for that. Certainly in the office, we're helping to grow leaders. You know, that's a function of being on the ALC, being on the task forces, even not as an ALC member, but just participating in what the office has going on, sharing in masterminds, agent panels, any of those. Those are all opportunities to develop your leadership skills, but they're going to become very critical when you start hiring people. The 7th goal category is systems and tools. So this is the things we have in place. These are your standards. These are the technology pieces we have. Questions that come up with these are, again, after the people conversation, you know, this is the remainder of leverage, the second part of leverage. So what systems or tools do we need to add? What are the current systems or tools do we need to improve or upgrade? There's an interesting consulting conversation I do a lot with agents called a tech audit. And it's actually taking a look at your business from how you capture leads in the very beginning to how you're closing and following up with people after the transaction. So it's lead generation through follow-up through the transaction process. And we take that, we break it down, and we look at the different systems and tools. It's quite interesting to look at the technology side when you start adding up the cost to some of these things. So if you're using CRMs and other third-party vendor tools, what's the cost of those? How much is that costing you per month, per year? That's a big part of the conversation with Keller Williams, developing our own in-house software and tools. The whole reason we did that, yes, to be competitive and stay at the front of the industry, but it was also to drive down the cost of these tools and systems to the agents. Some of the big teams can be spending tens of thousands a month on some of these systems. We're delivering relatively robust tools for less than $25 a month. Now there are going to be other things you need to add on to that, but just doing that study, taking a look at your business from lead gen through follow-up and transactions and really the life cycle of the consumer, the client, the systems and tools get real critical there. The eighth goal category, and maybe often overlooked, is personal development and education. Top agents know the difference between expenses and investments. Education is an investment. When times are tough and you need to look at your costs and your expenses, the one area that you do not cut back on is personal education and personal development. It's the one thing that you might actually increase your spending on. During times of a shifted market, it becomes a skills-based market. Right now, it's been a skills-based market, skills around pricing, negotiations, all of that goes back to the training and the learning that we do here in the market center. So scripts, role play, your listing presentation, all of those is related to personal development. And that's really just the beginning. We do things like Bold every year to sharpen our skills and stay on top of that. Some people can do different MAPS coaching. There's group coaching around certain skills if you want to get better at one thing. And there's also mastery. So mastery level is one-on-one coaching on a weekly basis. And all of the top producers, all the MREAs have either at least one coach or more. They may have multiple coaches, even for different parts of their life, not just business, that's helping them along the way. So again, personal education. What knowledge do I need to learn? What skills do I need to acquire? What knowledge do the individuals on my staff need to learn? What skills do they need to acquire? So go back to people. There's a great MAPS program. It's called the Perfect Real Estate Assistant. If you're making your first hire, I highly recommend that course, not just for you, but for them also. Take that and look at what's needed to really support you at a high level for you to be able to move on to the next level. And again, don't overlook the fact that people and those investments can really become lifelong investments. There's a couple great references in the book to different professionals where they started out just as an admin assistant and later went on to take over the entire company. So if you ever want to get to the 7th level, those first hires, those admin hires could be the whole reason you're able to get there. So definitely take a look at people and personal development. So that's the 8 goal categories. Again, up till now, we've been really looking at the mindset, the motivation, the inspiration of the MREA, and now we're going to get into the science of it. So let's see here. We're going to start with the economic model, but I wanted to pull up. I'm going to pull up a couple charts here. Should be figures. All right. So yes, these are the 4 fundamental business models of the MREA: the economic model, the lead generation model, the budget model, the organizational model. So the way the MREA book's laid out, it starts out with a very high level overview of these 4 areas. And then as the book goes on, it dives a little bit deeper. It starts to get more granular around some of these things. Now, really for today's conversation, I really want to kind of sit on this figure right here from page 122. And I'll try to get it sized appropriately for the purposes here. So again, 4 models here. This is a trivia question. 2 monthly stakeholder meetings ago, what are the 3 key areas of the economic model? Number 1, you have to know your numbers in order to hit them. Number 2, focus on appointments. And number 3, focus on conversions. As we move around to the right, we see the lead generation model. So lead generation model and the economic model go hand in hand. Once you lay out the numbers that you need to hit in the economic model, the lead generation model is how you're going to get the leads to support those. So again, that in the lead generation breaks down into prospect and marketing. There's only two methods of prospecting, which is telemarketing and face-to-face. Marketing, there's a multitude of ways you can market. And again, this was a contributed question, I think, also at the monthly stakeholders meeting around setting up a database and systematically marketing to it. And again, focusing on seller listings. Focusing on listings, typically, maybe not today's market exactly, but usually it's a 2-for. So for every listing, you should be able to pick up 2 buyers. Today's market might be 1, 1.5. We can debate that. But generally, in a balanced market, that's what we would see. Budget model, we'll talk more about this later on with lead with revenue, play red light, green light. That really is talking about return on investment, tracking your money to make sure you're getting the most bang for your buck, and sticking to the budget. The organizational model, once you're doing everything you can, hire help. And it starts with administrative help. Your first 2 hires will be admins. We'll talk more about that. Hiring talent. There's a lot of different sources for talent. We'll go through those. And training and consulting. Obviously, it's a big part of Keller Williams' mission, vision, values, and belief system that, not only do we think like a top producer, but we act like a trainer consultant. And so this graph shows the key areas of the model. Now, the next graph discusses more about the numbers that are needed for a millionaire real estate agent to hit these goals. Now, don't get overwhelmed by the numbers. Again, it's just kind of a high-level placeholder just to kind of give you an idea of where we're going. So looking at closed sales, looking at average prices. The GCI here, 2.4 million. It's actually maybe closer now. Research is showing us that it's closer to 2.6 million. Cost of sales and operating expenses follows the 30-30-40 model. So on this basis, the 700,000 represents 30% of the 2.4 million. So 30% cost of sales, 30% OPEX, leaves with 40%, which is net income. Seller listings, buyer listings, numbers 4, 5, and 6. These are the numbers. These are the monthly appointments and listings taken that you need to hit the MREA numbers. You'll see throughout the book that buyer listings, what does that mean? It means buyer agency contracts. So we can debate that also. We don't necessarily take buyer agency contracts with every buyer that we work with, but maybe we should. In terms of your numbers tracking, there is a difference between having a listing agreement in hand and having nothing in hand for the buyer side. So I always strongly recommend buyer agency agreements. Now, top MREAs are mostly focused on the listing side, but they still work with buyers for referrals and repeat business. So think about what you're doing with buyer agency agreements. They're certainly more of an assured source of income than similar to a listing agreement than not having anything at all, than just trusting that people are going to honor your relationship and do business with you. And again, just going around the circle here, just getting some perspective on the lead generation model. For the database, we're looking at, and we'll look at this next, around the circles, the rings that are shown on little bit more so later on in the book, not for this week, but for next week. We're looking at about 960 METs, about 8,000 habit METs. So you're trying to move those habit METs into the inner circle of the METs. The costs for lead generation, again, these are the models, the go-bys based upon the MREA, 30 to 60,000 a year, 96 to 190. And again, that's METs and habit METs. And again, we're focused on listings. At the bottom, we're looking at the costs, total cost of sales budget model. Feel free to stop me if we have any questions. Just kind of running through this at a high level, but if you see something you're curious about or don't understand, just yell at me. Again, the MREA book has a chart of accounts in the back. You can take a look at that and through the later sections. And it actually breaks down. These are the models that we follow that the top agents have found through our research and development. This is what they're aiming for. So total cost of sales, 29%. What's cost of sales? Easy way to remember cost of sales is licensed activities. So it's your royalty, it's your company dollar. It's also any referrals that you pay out to other agents. It's also your buyer's agents. So that's, again, licensed activities, cost of sales. Expenses is pretty much everything else. You have salaries for admin staff, lead generation, which could include labor, but also systems and tools, occupancy, tech, phone supplies, education, equipment. Now, there are other things to consider, health insurance, some of those things. But again, these are all the business numbers that we're trying. Yes.
Total cost of sales, please.
Cost of sales, I like to think of it as licensed activities. So, for example, your royalty, the 3%, 6%, the $3,000 that you pay to KW each year, that royalty, the company dollar, the $21,000 cap to the market center, but also any referrals that you pay to other agents. And if you have, like, for example, buyer's agents, somebody working for you on a team, it's a buyer agent splits as well. So it's licensed activities. It's the activities required to generate the sale. Cool?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, certainly. So then expenses are all broken down there. Continuing around to the organizational model. The 3 key hires, and when they say key hires, this is all in for the long term. Administrative manager. So one of those first admins you hire is going to become your long-term administrative manager. Buyer specialist, and they're going to run all the other admins later on, right? The buyer specialist. This could be one of your first showing assistants, but they graduate to the buyer specialist level, and they can actually start seeing other buyer agents that work on the team. And as you replace yourself with a listing specialist, eventually that lead seller specialist will enable you to step out of the business and step into the 7th level and oversee the listings. Again, 7 recruiting resources, 9 compensation options. We'll take a look at some of those, some pretty interesting things to discuss there. Does anybody have any questions? I don't have a side-by-side for these two, but again, it's the same 4 models, but just kind of represented and presented differently. But take a look at those on pages 122 and 123. All right, we'll jump back into the slide presentation here. We're going to start today with the economic model. So again, we know the 8 goal categories of the MREA. Now we can start looking into the economic model. Again, it was a little bit smaller here. I thought the other view was a little bit easier to read. Same image from page 122. There's a great story in here about Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett, a lot of his success was based upon the models of predecessors, people that he studied back when he was in college. Investment strategies, they're all modeled, and there's been books written about it. So Warren, he took it upon himself to become a student of the models and to really immerse himself in the models. And he still refers to them every day when it comes to his investments. I'm sorry. Read the book MREA 12 times. That's great. Obviously you can follow along with what we're reading now, but But go back to the book and use it as a resource. I think of it as a textbook more so. I bookmark a lot of pages. I start to memorize actual page numbers just because I've looked at them so many times. But go back and read it, and read it as at least annually and as needed. And that's on page 127. Page 125 also kind of talks about figure 5, the idea of building things based upon models. So let me just show you something else. I want to just share one more figure here. This is kind of the idea of the hobo shack versus houses. You know, the whole idea is that you can't build a house without blueprints and plans. And that's what the MREA is. It's giving you the blueprints, the plans. You don't have to think about it. You just have to embrace what's there, accept what's there as best practices, or proven practices, I should say. They can always be improved upon, but they're proven practices. Maybe not the best. There could be something better in the future. Although in 15 years, MREA still holds up. Well, it's almost 20 years, 18 years anyway. It still holds up to be true. Now, some of the book has not been rewritten, but there are some differences in the numbers around the conversion rates and some of the economic numbers. We'll talk more about that. But obviously, you know, if you're going to build a business, start with a plan, have a plan in place, and it's in your hands already. And just to kind of like put that in perspective, when you think about it, beginning with models versus beginning with creativity, what's the difference here? What do you see as the difference between these two, what's shown on the left versus on the right? So creativity off of a model, creativity without a model. What's the difference between the two? Brad.
The one on the right doesn't have any fundamentals. It's just kind of just going around doing whatever it wants without having a system in place.
Right, right. So what's on? So what do you see on the left-hand side, right?
It looks like they have a system in place. They have the fundamentals, but they're also being creative. But if they go too far off the track, they will always have a system.
Exactly. So the straight line represents the systems or the models, right? So on the right-hand side, you know, when you're being creative, that's wonderful, but each reference point, if your last reference point, if that's what your basis is, and that point was off, then your next move is also going to be off. So you really have like no idea if you're making improvements. You don't really know if you're making an improvements or if you're making non-improvements. The idea of having a model is even when you deviate from it, you can come back to the center. You can come back to a reference point that you can trust. And Brad said it right. You can see the creativity on the side. You know, as agents explore different marketing and lead generation opportunities, you know, you'll find out which ones work for you. So maybe you go off and want to explore something, hold it accountable, look at the rate of return. If not, then move back towards the center to follow the model. There's a lot of different analogies you could play out in this scenario. Another good one is, you know, driving your clients around without using GPS. If you're just making left turns and right turns, who knows when you're going to get there? You know, stuck in traffic, if there's an accident, a delay, unless you have a map or a GPS, you're not going to get there on time. So that's really the point of this, is to follow the models that we have. Don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can get creative around a lot of different parts of it. You know, a lot of people come into real estate. It might be it's the first time they've been kind of free to do what they want to do, to build a business the way they want to run it the way they want to. And they get all excited about that part of it, but then they lose sight of following the models. So that's why we're doing this today. And don't overlook the power of the models, really. So we did Warren Buffett. Okay, economic model, that's what we're going to touch on today. The numbers we have to hit on page 130. So 130, 131. 131 actually shows the figure 7 there. And we actually have a nice, we have some tools for this from the Business Planning Clinic with Gene Rivers. It's also going to be coming up again this year. Take a look at the Market Center calendar. It's in October, I believe. And there's also going to be a business planning mastermind with maps, I think also maybe in November. Number 1, focus on the numbers you need to hit. Number 2, focus on appointments. 3, focus on the conversion rates. The next one here, It's a regression analysis. It's actually kind of flip-flop from what's shown on page 131. In the economic model worksheet shown on the screen, we're actually working backwards from our year-end goal. So we start with our net income goal for the end of the year. We factor in the expenses and the gross income, and then we have to look at the source of the business. You know, what percentage comes from listings and buyer sides. You can go back last year, take a look at your numbers, and do this analysis. See how many units, average prices, and conversion rates from both your buyer and seller sides. Right, Petra, thanks for putting that in the chat box. So Gene Rivers is September 29th, 9 to 5. Now, something important about that, and I'm not sure about ticket availability. There's a limited number of in-person, in Zoom tickets. So to actually be in the event with Gene, there's a limited number of tickets on that day, and there's a difference in the ticket prices. There's also, I believe, a remote or Facebook live stream that you can watch, a different price there. And I'm sure you have to register in order to either way to get the recordings. So take a look at that. Everybody loves Gene Rivers. If you've never been to it before, you'll want to do it every year. It's the time for goal setting for next year. And Gene runs a 7th level business out of Florida with his wife. And he's just a great guy and has a lot of great stories. But we'll do this exercise. MREA does it with the new agents. I'll do it. We'll do it with anybody that hasn't done their economic model. P.S. By the way, even if you've never done this, you actually still have an economic model. You just may not be aware of it, and that's why knowing your numbers is important. So everybody has some kind of economic model, but if you haven't looked at consciously looking at where those leads come from and the conversion rates around them, then I definitely advise sitting down and doing that. We can go back for the past year, and then based upon that, we can look to see where we want to go for 2022. Let's see here. Okay, this is a little bit just interactive, kind of stepping you through. We do have this in Excel, so Excel would make it a lot easier, of course. The Excel spreadsheet also will provide your budget of accounts and also your P&L. So you would actually get all 3 parts in the Excel spreadsheet that we have from Business Planning with Gene Rivers. So if you don't already have that, let me know and we can sit down and work on that. So again, we look at the net income plus expenses equals the gross income. Looking at the percent of listings, buyers, percent on each side, average commission rates, the seller sold volume, average price is important, obviously. Conversion rates. Conversion rates goes to skills. And in the beginning, we mentioned it's a skills-based market. So conversion rates goes to scripts, practice, and role play, and presentations. If you have a problem with conversion rates, those are the areas that you need to work on. If you have a problem with getting the leads and appointments, that's different. But converting them into listings or into buyer agency agreements, that's a skills-based conversion rate. And if you've never calculated those before, that's another great exercise to go back and look at. The MREA models later on we'll look at. There are some typical go-bys on conversion rates that have been updated since this book was published 18 years ago. They're not too far off, but they are a little bit different. So it is good to see the current numbers and what the research is showing us. Buyer side, same thing. Again, buyer's volume, total units, conversion rates, all boiling down to the number of listing appointments that you need and the buyer appointments that you need. So that's how many you need of each for the whole year to net your income. So here's another example with some numbers in here, 200,000 of income plus 40,000 gives us a 240 gross. That's what we're aiming for on the gross side. If we say our business is healthy, run at 50-50, then we have half of each. So that means we need 120,000 from the sellers and we need 120. All right, we'll slow down. 120 from the seller side at 2.7%. Now that might be a national average on the commission side. Our office average is 2.4 currently. That's where we've been running historically. We've been as high as 2.6. Pennsylvania versus New Jersey, you'll see closer to 3% on the Pennsylvania side. And you might also see higher percentages in the South Jersey side compared to our local area here. And as you go further north, there's a lot of pressure on commissions. Staten Island and some of those parts close to Manhattan and other parts of North Jersey, there's a lot of pressure on commissions. But take a look at your numbers. Go back and look at your numbers specifically. It could be unique to you and your business, to your economic model. So in order to get 120,000 gross income, 10 to 30. Peter, what's the 10 to 30 if what's the $10 to $30? Oh, that's for Gene Rivers?
Yes.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, so $30 to be live in the Zoom with Gene Rivers, $10 to be on the Facebook. Obviously in the Zoom you can interact with Gene and ask questions. But I think it was capped at like 200 seats.
It is. And it's currently still available. The extended edition, the $10 is for the recordings and resources. So you can even just spend $10 to get the recording.
Yes. And it's worth even to do that because they will give you the latest materials. They'll give you the spreadsheet. They'll give you the student guides and a lot of all the resources will come with that. Okay, so we need about 4.5 million of seller volume with an average price of $250. Our average price last month for Princeton Market Center just exceeded $400,000 for the month of July. It was $409. Our year-to-date's over it's close to $360. We have not seen a $400,000 average price in 10 years, but I think it's a great indicator of where we're going and the opportunities that we have here in Princeton. So 250 sales price means 17 listings, 18 listings sold, and an 80% conversion rate. And we need to know our conversion rates. That would mean we have to have 22 listings taken, 18 of which have to actually close. 65% conversion rate would be 34 total listing appointments. So again, knowing your conversion rates, the 80 and the 65, that's what's different. On the buyer side, same math, 120,000 gross, say 2.5%, the same 4.5, 250 average sales price. The numbers work out to be similar. And we're using, and at least in this example, we're using all the same conversion rates. The numbers are a little bit different currently, but anyway. So this is the exercise you can do. If you want to sit down and do it together, I'd be happy to. We can get you the Excel spreadsheet. We can start looking at that. So feel free to reach out. We'll set up an appointment. You see, there's a couple other questions in the chat box. John's asking for the registration link. Peter, can you cut and paste the Eventbrite into the chat box? Or John, if you can go to the Market Center calendar, just take a look at that in September's calendar. You'll see it's already posted there.
Frank, I'll do it. Frank,
okay.
I'll copy and paste it.
All right, cool.
Two.
All right, thanks, Peter. Okay, so we went through the exercise. I think everybody understands how the math works. Was there any questions on that? Do you want me to go back through anything? Anybody online? Thanks for being with us here today. Any questions from the online? Mickey?
I'm good, thank you.
Cool. Amy? I know the MREA and the models have been a big part of your success. Any insights you'd like to share?
I think, Frank, I mentioned previously that we really use this, year in and year out, and it's time to start reading again for 2022. And again, it's just that guide, that roadmap for success. And if you read it over and over, there's no better way to take your business and launch it to the most exponential level you could ever dream of. Like I said, I know it sounds cliche, but like I said, all you need to be successful is in that book. And we definitely have used it day in and day out.
Yeah. Well, I like too, it's a good reminder. you don't have to build the biggest business, but it will greatly assist in your ability to build a business and a life by design. You don't have to do huge volume to have a great life and to have a balanced life of personal time and vacation, time for family and those things. So beyond making money, yeah, money sounds great, but really it's a lot of those other things that really make life worth living. So thanks for the reminder, Amy. Anybody else on the line want to share something? Otherwise, I think we'll wrap it up for today.
So on the conversion rate,
Yes, John.
let's say we don't know that. Can we just put the averages at the beginning, or how do we calculate that? How?
Well, for example, have you gone back over the past year and added up the total number of appointments that you went on?
No.
Well, that would be the first conversion rate. Look to see how many listing appointments you went on versus listings taken, and how many buyer appointments you went on and buyer agency agreements taken, or whatever you would qualify as a buyer representation. Maybe that's just a signed CIS. I don't know. But take a look at those, and then look at the actual number of listings that you took and the number of buyers. Let me see if I should have one more. I have. John, next week when we get into the lead generation model, we could definitely revisit the conversion rates.
All right, cool. Thank you.
And I'll get the numbers. I'll get all the current numbers that we have from the latest research, and I'll bring those to next week as well. Okay. Any other questions? Anybody in the room here today? Thanks everybody for being here. Okay. Scanning the room, everybody looks good. Chat box, everybody's good. John, you got the link from Petra? Everybody's all set. All right, thanks everybody for being here today. And next week, just a reminder, we're not going to have session on Thursday. August 26th, 20-year celebration, Keller Williams Princeton, Mountain Lakes House over in the city there. If you haven't already, please register. And join us for Mega Camp all next week, Monday through Wednesday. We'll be here in the office Tuesday, 11 to 2 for Gary Keller's live stream. Food and drinks, don't miss it.
And the ice cream truck.
Yes, food, drinks, and treats in that order. Thanks, everybody.